what God told him, and the walls fell down. Now I raised the question. What if the people had said, and I'm 99% sure by that time that it was Joshua leading. I believe Moses had already died. What if Joshua had said, now Lord, you know this is a whole lot of extra work here and everything, you know, I mean, I don't see the point in it. I know you've got the power to tear the walls down. How about this? Let's just go ahead and you just tear them down and we're going to get this thing over with. Can you imagine Joshua talking to the Lord like that? Well, and in that kind of the way we talk today, I remember years ago, and I mentioned this one time way back in the lesson, I believe. I was talking to a man that was we had just finished talking about the children of Israel walking around the walls of the city of Jericho, and then how that God told them what to do, and when they accomplished that, the walls fell down. And then I asked the question, what about if Joshua had said, Lord, this is going to be a lot of extra work here and time and everything. How about we just, we know you can take the walls down. Let's just go ahead and get this thing done here, and we'll go ahead and take the city. Just go ahead and tear them down. Well, of course we can't. I don't think anybody would say that that would be the acceptable thing for Joshua to have done. But then brought again to your mind that what we're trying to discuss here is whether or not we should organize churches like we've been talking about. And I had said earlier that we're not authorized to do that. And then we considering the objection that people would say, well, so what? Does it make any difference whether it's authorized or not? I mean, he didn't tell us not to do it. And I started to tell you the story when the tape ran out. I was in another country several years ago, and I was talking to a man who was president of the Methodist Church in that country. And during the discussion, I made the point that there is no authority in the scriptures for people organizing the church and having somebody to be the president of it in some type of headquarters. And he just quite plainly told me, he said, you'll find out that if you're going to accomplish anything, you're going to have an organization larger than the local church. Now, that, my dear listener, is the type of thinking that has gotten us into the trouble that we're in. Now, by the way, I'm going to say, I would not doubt at all that that man was honest and sincere in his statement. But where we get into trouble is deciding, first of all, what we're trying to accomplish, and also, and we'll talk about it more later, hopefully, the fact that in the first 50 or 60 years after the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the gospel was spread over the known world, and multitudes and multitudes of people were saved and added to that assembly that God is collecting and calling out of the world by the gospel. It's a proven fact that that was accomplished without having an earthly headquarters and without organizing man-made systems of religion. I'll have to stop on that because I'll get too carried away with it, but we'll come back to it later. But before we do, I want to get on with a few more examples here of occasions and events back here in the Hebrew records, the inspired messages that we have here, and see if we're still on the right track here. This time I'm calling your attention again to the case of Naaman, who was a leper. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because I did in a previous tape some months, years back, I guess, in this series. But the bare bones of the situation is that this man Naaman was a leper, and he was a military officer in the Syrian army that was actually an enemy of the nation of Israel, and they had captured some slaves, some prisoners, and took them back and made them slaves in Syria. There was a young girl there taking care of this officer's wife. She was a servant to Naaman's wife, and she told Naaman's wife, she said, if the master there, Naaman said, if he was down there in the land of Israel, said, there's a prophet down there can heal him of his leprosy. And so we won't go into all the details, as I said, but he finally gets down there to the prophet's house after making several wrong turns, I'll call it, and he pulls up there with all his horses and his chariot and all this, and no telling how big of a entourage was with him, and in front of Elisha's house, and Elisha just sent his servant out there, a messenger, and told him, said, go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. Verse 10 of 2 Kings 5. That's pretty simple. Again, go wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. There it is. Well, I think this is a perfect example of what we're discussing here, and it bears a lot of light, sheds a lot of light on this subject. When we see the reaction that Naaman had, first of all, it says Naaman got mad. He said he was wroth, and he left out. And then he said, first of all, he said his first complaint was, he said, I thought he would come out and wave his hand over the place, and then I'd be healed. You see, Naaman already had his mind made up about how this thing ought to take place. And I'm afraid, well, I'm not just afraid, I'm just certain that a lot of our problems in trying to determine what God wants us to do and does not want us to do in our matter of continuing in the fellowship that the apostles taught is a lot of our problems arise from the fact that we've got our mind already made up. I heard a fellow say one time, he said, I'm so and so name for religion, certain denomination, and he said, I'll die that, and you ain't going to change me. Well, you see, that's what if you've got your mind already made up, and you don't, as the fellow said, I've got my mind made up. Don't confuse me with the facts. And I realize that, and I'm conscious of the fact, and so it's actually concerned about the facts, particularly in this series of studies, And I'm going to talk about it more in detail later, but I'm concerned that somebody might feel like that I'm just trying to be ugly and hurtful and picking on people and so forth and so on. But I really, if I know my own heart, I'm not really trying to do that. I am trying, even though I have studied this before, I'm trying to go back with an open mind and see, do the scriptures really bear out what I'm trying to say to you? So I say to you, Naaman's first problem was he already had his mind made up how this thing ought to take place. And when it didn't go that way, he got mad about it. And we're tempted to be that way too. All right, now the next mistake, serious mistake that Naaman made was, in verse 12 of 1 Kings 5, he mentions 2 rivers up there in Damascus, the capital city of where he was from. And he said, there are better waters than the waters of Israel, this old muddy Jordan. And he said, may I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned that chariot around and says he left in a rage. This, I think, has more of a direct bearing upon what we're talking about. When we're talking about things being authorized by God or not authorized, or being scriptural, that is, according to the inspired writings, or being unscriptural, meaning having no inspired writing to justify our particular action or teaching. So here's an example right here, I believe, that will bear out the point that I'm trying to make in these studies. God had simply, through the prophet, through the messenger of the prophet, says to Naaman, go dip 7 times in the river Jordan, and you'll be clean. Well, Naaman says, well, that's ridiculous. The waters up there where I come from are a lot purer than this old muddy Jordan River. Why can't I go dip in them? Don't you see that by his own prejudices, he was offended by God instructing him, or the prophet instructing him, to go dip in the Jordan. And you can apply that to so many, many different things. God gives us instructions on how to do certain things, and people say, well, that doesn't suit me. I like this better. Well, I humbly suggest to you that Naaman could have gone and dipped as long as he wanted to in those rivers up there in Damascus, and he'd have never been healed of his leprosy. And not because the power was in the water of Jordan, or that's not the point. The point is, God specified what river he wanted him to dip in. He said the Jordan. Just like building the ark out of gopher wood. And so forth. Just like speak to the rock. Just like get your fire for the incense right here. But they went and got it somewhere else. Now, that's the way it looks to me. So, are we going to be brave enough? Are we going to be brazen enough to defy God and say, well, I know how you said to do that, but I've got a better idea here. I don't think what you said is going to work. We're going to have to do something else. I'm afraid of it, my dear listener. Let's see if we can find out anything else here. Well, finally, the servant talked to his master there, Naaman, and he talked him into going down there to the river Jordan. And he said he dipped 7 times. And according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like in the flesh of a little child. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to bring it up again. Let me ask it in the form of a question. If Naaman had a dipped 1 time and gone back to Syria, do you think he'd have been healed of his leprosy? You just answer to yourself. What if he dipped 5 times and went back? What if he dipped 6 times and went back? Do you think he'd have been healed? God said go dip 7 times and you'll be healed of your leprosy. And he finally went. He dipped 7 times and he was healed. It's back to that little illustration like I've used a time or two here already, is that when we say to your children, or little children or grandchildren, son or daughter, that was what I told you to do. If you say, look here, take this handful of waste paper and put it over here on the trash can. If they go and open the door and throw it out in the yard, you say, that wasn't what I told you to do with that. And so therefore, shall we not respect our Heavenly Father, our Creator, our Sustainer? Please think about it. Now, here's another case. This one I don't think I've talked with you about before. Those of you who have watched this entire series, we'll go back now to 1 Samuel chapter 13. I tried to get these cases in chronological order, but I didn't do it correctly. This one's backing up here from the case of Naaman. But anyway, you'll get the lesson. 1 Samuel 13 and covers verses 8 through 15 here. I'll try to get the setting here. By the way, there's a good point to keep in mind here. If you'll study it out, you'll see that Samuel quite often would go to a certain city and he'd call the people together and they'd offer sacrifices there. And apparently that was that part of his duty and responsibility as a prophet of God to Israel. So Samuel had told Saul, he said, now you go and you wait 7 days up here at a place called Gilgal. And he said, I'm going to be there, I'll be up there and offer sacrifice. Well, Saul, the king of Israel there, the new king, he got sort of in a tight situation there. They'd had a battle with the Philistines and killed a bunch of them, and the whole nation rose up and basically was coming after Saul and his army. And the idea of the burnt offerings and the sacrifice and so forth was to appeal to God and ask for them to have his assistance in this military campaign here, as the way I understand it. And so Saul waits, and troubles are coming on, and he gets awful nervous here, and Samuel's not showed up. And he thinks that he's not going, I guess he thought he wasn't going to come or something happened or whatever. And Saul tells some of the people, says here, said, bring me the burnt offering here and some peace offerings. And Saul took it upon himself and offered the burnt offering. And it says here that just as soon as he got through making these offerings, up comes Samuel. And Saul went out to meet him. And verse 11 said, Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, his army that he had gathered was leaving him. And he said, thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines were gathering themselves together at Michmash, I believe it is. And said, therefore I said, the Philistines will come down now upon me in Gilgal, and I have not made supplication to the Lord. He said, I forced myself therefore to offer the burnt offering. Now you know, that sounds, you got to kind of feel sorry for Saul there in a way. I mean, you know, as I said, he was in a pretty good bind there. Things were not going very well, and so he said, I needed the help of the Lord here, and said, I just went ahead and offered that sacrifice and stuff, you know. Well, you as I said, you want to kind of feel sorry for him, but now listen to what Samuel said to him. Verse 13 of chapter 13 in 1 Samuel. And Samuel said to Saul, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart. And the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. And Samuel arose and gat him up from Gilgal unto Gibeah. Samuel just more or less told Saul, but he said, you've messed up. You didn't follow the instructions of the Lord. You've taken upon yourself to offer these sacrifices. As far as I can tell, the fault was in the fact that he wasn't authorized to do it. That was what Samuel was supposed to do. And Samuel said, because of it, your kingdom's not going to last. You're going to be replaced. And got up and left. Now, I know, and I can understand why, that there's a certain number of people, good-hearted people, they're going to naturally respond to this by saying, you know, that just seems awful harsh. And as I said a while ago, the human tendency is to, you know, feel sorry for Saul there. But I'm going to bring another case about Saul here, and I think that we'll get some more light on it. I don't, for a minute, read in the scriptures anything to lead me to think that God was just waiting on Saul to make a little mistake so he could jump on him about it. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that God has had that attitude for us today. And the action itself, the fact that he offered the sacrifice when he apparently wasn't authorized to, the action itself is not the evil. It's not the major problem. The problem is not acting by faith. It's an attitude problem, as I have said in past occasions that somebody close to me keeps reminding me about. It all goes back to attitude. Now, let's go to another case here of Saul's rulership as king. I'm going over now to the 15th chapter. You would think that this warning would be enough here in the 13th chapter of the record, but we're going over to 1 Samuel 15. And we've got another situation. God, through Samuel, tells Saul, said, God wants you to go down there to the land of Amalek, and I want you to utterly destroy that nation. I mean, he said, I'll go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. Get it all. Clean sweep. Now, that's a whole big subject in itself. I'm not going to get off on it right now. Some people are going to say, oh, I can't believe that God would command that been done. But he did. There was reasons for it. I won't go into it right now. But the reason for citing this is Saul went down there, he took his army, and when he got down there, why, they began that horrible work of annihilating those people. But verse 9 tells us here that said, but Saul and the people spared the old king Agag, and the best of the sheep and the oxen and the fatlings and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuge, that they destroyed utterly. Now you see, there's human nature. And I can see the temptation for that. I mean, you down there, and boy, there's some of the finest horses. Woo-wee. Israel maybe didn't have any horses like that. Big, fine cattle. Boy. And human nature was, why, it'd be awful to destroy all that. But them old scrubs over there, just get rid of them. And get a little pride here. We're going to take old King Agag back up there, back home. We'll have a big prize, Be a big political victory there. Well, let me show you what happened. God spoke to Samuel. Let's see, he told him, God spoke to Samuel, verse 11, it says, it repenteth me. I take that to mean that every time it's used in the scriptures about God, that God said, I just wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't ever put Saul to be king. He said he's turned back from following me and he's not performed my commandments. Well, it said that it grieved Samuel and he cried unto the Lord all night. That touches me there to think about how dedicated and self-sacrificing that Samuel was. He couldn't rest, wept all night over this situation. And he gets up the next morning, went out early and met Saul coming back from the campaign. And Saul met Samuel and said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel says, well, what's this thing I hear all these bleating sheep and the lowing of the oxen? And Saul says, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and oxen they're going to sacrifice them to God when they get back.